author Karen Dobre is here with me in the studio. There's so many more adjectives and describing words that I could introduce with Karen, but today you're here because congratulations, pitch invasion, or maybe bitch invasion, is the name of your new book, and it's obviously to do with other titles that we could describe you as, and one of them is really your involvement with Lewes Football Club. You were a director of the club, you've been a volunteer and involved with the club for 7 years. But this one is really your story of how you got involved in the least likely way, right? Because you never had any interest in football as such.
Exactly. It's kind of absurd that I became a football club director because I never liked football. And I wasn't a football fan, and indeed my interests were really elsewhere. So when I did get involved and went as far as to become elected onto the board, my friends were laughing me under the table, saying, "What, you are a football club director?" So yeah, it's the kind of unexpected story of how someone who was from the worlds of fashion and then therapy got so involved in football.
Right. And, I've known you for a number of years. We've met here on Latest TV a few times, and your story is really incredible. I mean, it's not just that you were not interested in football and then you found yourself director of the club. The whole ethos of the club, the whole, all the things that you brought to the role, I mean, dare I say, a little bit quirky, unusual, revolutionary at times.
Well, we should say, first of all, that Lewes FC became the only club in the world to pay and resource women equally to men in 2017. And that change was brought about by two male directors at the club. But I was married to one of them. And he said to me, "What would you say if we paid the women the same as the men?" And I said, I didn't know that there were women playing football. And from
it was that remote from the world.
Yeah, I was so green. And then, because I've always been a feminist, I asked, well, how come you don't pay them the same as the men? Because I knew nothing about how male-dominated football is at that point. So I went to watch a match, got very involved because I just thought these women were amazing. And I thought they were the antidote to all of the kind of sexist guff that we see all the time, telling women which spaces they can be in, how much they can use their voice, what they need to be like in order to be accepted and valid as women. And I just thought, these women footballers, I just want all my friends, I want my daughter, I want everyone to see these women. And what really annoyed me and motivated me to get so involved was that the criticism of paying the women the same as the men was that they didn't deserve it because they didn't get the same crowds. But how could they get the same crowds if people like me didn't know they were playing?
Right. So this vicious circle.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly. Yeah.
And you were out there to change that.
Yeah, so the quirky things that you speak of were things that I introduced to the club in order to feel that I belonged there. And therefore that other people like me who were maybe turned off football by toxic masculinity or the fact that they'd never thought it was for them, little did they know that women's football was banned for 50 years and girls were told that you don't play football at school, boys do, and women who liked football were told they were weird, and anyone that wanted to play football that was female had to overcome loads and loads of obstacles to do it. So there were many, many reasons why these women weren't getting crowds, and it just really annoyed me that people thought it was because they weren't good.
Right. And you yourself, I mean, you were a fashion model.
Yeah.
You turned in a counsellor at some stage. I think you probably did bring aspects of these worlds into your own journey of being involved with the football club,
well,
no?
100%. I brought my whole self to the board, and I realised very quickly that that's what I needed to do, because on the board was mainly men, sometimes only men, sometimes there was other women, but they usually, unfortunately, didn't last too long because it's very difficult within such a male-dominated society industry where women are so marginalised to keep having to bring up, certain aspects of the football club when everyone's so pressed and everyone's working so hard just to get the shows on the road, So I brought my whole self. I brought, when I, for example, photographed the female players when they were signing, and they were awkward about posing in front of the camera, I was able to just sort of say, well, look, just imagine it's your grandma that you're looking up at with really kind, loving eyes. And just like, let's think of a way of posing that isn't the same as in the male game, you know, and isn't like, you know, a model to camera.
Yeah.
Somewhere in between where you're an agent of your own life, which, you know, would mirror the football game that they play, where they really are their own person. Something that represents you. Let's think how you want to pose and feel relaxed and warm about it.
Right,
You know?
right.
So, for example, that's just an example. Then with counselling, you know, I'm going to say interpersonal skills aren't always the highest on a football club board. So I was able to sort of bring some of the lessons I'd learned through counselling to the board, and also to think about, you know, acknowledging how different the culture was, and that might be stopping other people from outside entering. So, you know, not everyone is so comfortable doing fist bumps and high fives all the time,
Right.
you know, or it is comfortable. They're not being oat milk at matches for their tea or coffee. You know, I'm thinking about different markets. So it makes sense in terms of, you know, our social and cultural well-being to include everyone, but economically as well, it makes a lot of sense to be reaching out to new people for football.
I'm interested in the Prosecco on tap.
Yeah, well, that as well, the Prosecco on tap, which went down better with the men than the women.
Right, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
all right. The word suffragette is mentioned even on the back cover. I mean, do you regard yourself as a sort of suffragette?
Well, not really. I mean, I look up to the suffragettes massively for what they did, and I very much believe in deeds, not words, which was why I liked working in football, because we could, you know, it's all very well, if you're talking about gender equality, women supporting each other and gathering, which I think is of great value. But if you want to really change the world, then we have to demonstrate to men how it can be done, because unfortunately we live in a patriarchy where men are making most of these decisions. So I thought football was a genius place to make change. And in that sense, like a suffragette, believing in deeds, not words, you know. But also because we did a suffragette flash mob. It was so funny. Honestly, we got it choreographed by amazing choreographer Ginny Farman in Lewes. And we gathered in the precinct outside W.H. Smith in Lewes and dressed as suffragettes. We did a great dance to Sisters Are Doing It For Themselves. And we marched to the Dripping Pan with banners saying deeds, not words. And that was fun, you know, made the front page of the Sussex Express, whatever. But all these things, I think, are ways of laying claim to space as women that aren't traditionally ours. So we might have started with the vote and then birth control in the 60s, and now equal pay is a big thing, you know, that can liberate women and give us more choices in our lives, but also, crucially, liberate men and allow them to take on roles that they aren't traditionally allowed to do, like stereotypically, like nurturing, caring, you know, being themselves emotionally and letting go a bit, you know.
Right.
So all these things, if we take away these stereotypes, we can free people up to just be themselves and get the most out of them, and they get the most out of their lives.
So you had all these ideas, you put into practice a lot of them, you sat down and you wrote the book. What was the process of, I mean, were you amazed with yourself? Be honest.
So my way of processing, so I'm a former therapist as well, as you know, is to kind of get it all out somehow. And also I try to see things with a sort of sense of humour, because sometimes you either laugh or cry, right? So when I finished on the board of Lewes FC, I'd been for an amazing ride in a way. I'd done so much that I never dreamt I'd do. I'd got to work with some amazing people that did amazing things at Lewes FC and beyond. And I was so, I was just in a space where I needed to decompress, as Serena Wiegmann might say, and write it all down. So I did. And I also thought, you know, this is important, the work we've done at Lewes, you know, introducing gender equality to football, and it's a world first, and someone has to record it and say what happened. So I kind of did that for myself and to spark conversations, because I think it's so important that, you know, on the one hand, we can talk to men because we're using football, which has such a big influence over many men's hearts and minds, but also that we can talk to women about how it's possible to kind of self-actualize really in spaces that we didn't traditionally think were ours.
Okay, and very, very quickly, pitch invasion, but why is a little addition to make it bitch invasion?
Oh, you noticed that. So I've got my lucky lipstick under the P, making it a B. I wanted to call it bitch invasion as a sort of ironic joke, because obviously some men get quite protective about their space in football and see it as a kind of sanctuary away from women.
Right, right.
So it's kind of a joke, a sort of nod to that. But the sales team at my publishers said Amazon won't like the word bitch, so we have to call it pitch invasion. So we got round it by using
Just
my
adding.
lucky lipstick, which is what I put on when I want Lewis to score a goal.
Absolutely. Karen, good luck with the book.
Thank you so much.
Many thanks for coming.
Thank you.
If you have a local news story you would like to share with our viewers, please email us at news@thelatest.co.uk. Thank you for watching.